Good evening and welcome to the April 15th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First item is we're going to go into executive session. We will be coming back out of executive session. We're going in to discuss the KSOC pending litigation, which is going to be a final order of conditions and acceptance of the plan. So I need a motion and a second to go into executive session, please, and we'll do a roll call vote for it.
I'll make the motion, go into executive session.
I'll second it, Gladfelter.
Okay, so the vote to go into executive session, and a reminder, we will be coming back. It should be fairly short, just so you know. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Maury,
Arlo Hawks, aye.
Peter. Peter, I didn't hear you. Give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay. We'll be going into executive session. Thomas, I believe you can stop recording now. the April 15th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. For clarity, I guess, we've come out of executive session. We voted an amended order of conditions for the KSOC property. So just to remind everyone, we are doing this meeting virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient, allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamlined online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be aware of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen in your background. The board recognizes the attendance of staff members, Jen, Kevin, Susan. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry. We also recognize the attendance of all the commissioners, Betsy, Courtney, Jamie, Kevin, Mark, Maury, Peter, Russ, and Steve. Again, to the commissioners, for commenting, you know the drill. We're going to call so that everybody gets a chance. And all voting is roll call vote. So please be patient with that. To our public participants, there's an opportunity for public comment in the chat function at the appropriate time during the specific hearing you'd like to comment on. You can chime in on that. Any other rules that maybe have been missed or guidance that you may need is on the agenda and is on the website. So with all that being said, first up is vote minutes of April 8th, 2020.
Mr.
I'll move-
Chairman, there's a problem with them.
Okay. A problem that we want to continue them?
No. No, I'll tell you what the problem is. On the top of page 4, there was a vote. Well, it starts at the bottom of page 3. Courtney says move to accept staff's recommendations, which was for a positive motion.
Right,
And Maury seconded, and it starts out with Gladfelter, no. And then everybody else says aye, but everybody else didn't say aye. Everybody else said no. And then the last part is correct. Staff recommends a positive 3 because of our regulations. We ask the board to look at the site and make your own decision. Staff will send out a negative determination. So the only thing that has to be changed is all the yeses after people have to change to nos.
Okay, so I think we can accept that as
correct.
corrected.
I picked up on that too.
Yeah, that's my motion to accept once you correct that.
Okay,
I have one other correction, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Page 11, under orders of conditions, on page 11 in the middle, this was on the riprap one. It says that I voted aye, I voted no. So the vote was not unanimous. It was whatever it is to 1. I want the record to show that.
okay. So we'll have the record corrected to Bird no. And that therefore it's not unanimous, but it is moved. Okay. Anything else?
I'll move to accept the minutes as amended or corrected, I should say.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, so we'll take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Russ,
Robin,
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, next up is continued hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a single decision under each authority. First up, continued hearings under a notice of intent, James McLaughlin, Town of Falmouth, Ashumet Road and Catherine Lee Bates Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install structural stormwater treatment best management practices along Ashumet Road and Catherine Lee Bates Road, and to resurface portions of Ashumet Road and the entire length of Catherine Lee Bates Road. Jen? I'm sorry. Well, you tell me who.
You want to know who? Do you want to know who was on?
Need
Jamie?
the quorum? Yes, please.
Jamie, the quorum is all of us.
Simple enough. All right. Jen, do you know who's gonna lead? Unmute, please.
Jen, you gotta unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I think Jim will say a few words for the town, and then the presentation will be given by Ben Lundstedt and Nick Shaw. Just to refresh the board's memory, there were a few revisions the town staff wanted to see. Mark had done all the wetland flagging out there, so staff. Mark Kasperzik and Alyssa Bergeron met with Jim McLaughlin and the engineers last week at some time to go over all of the changes, and I believe everything that was of concern to the staff agents was addressed.
Okay. So Jim, do you have anybody that wants to say anything? Or you
Sure.
yourself, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James McLaughlin, town engineer, and as Jen mentioned, we did meet a week ago Monday with Mark and Alyssa, and went to all of the sites with the exception of Ashumet. But we talked about all of them, and Mark and Alyssa had a number of suggested modifications, which we've incorporated into the plans. And as far as Ashumet and Catherine Lee Bates, I believe, Ben, you would be the lead on that.
Yeah, and thank you. Ben Lundstedt from Comprehensive Environmental. Yeah, I actually did not get to go on the meeting, so I worked with Nick on the revisions, and we resolved most of the stuff that you guys had discussed. But Nick, because he was at the meeting, is going to go in detail. But just to note that we did meet with the town on April 6th, last Monday, and we went over the changes, and we did make some revisions and tried to add as much stormwater treatment as possible. And I think there were some possible grading changes that we looked at. Some of those could be done and some of them could be not, just to prevent some safety hazards. So I think Jim and Nick can kind of comment on that as we go through, but I will just hand it over to Nick to kind of talk about all the project sites in detail.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So Nick Shaw from Comprehensive Environmental. And we can probably just start off with Ashumet if you want to just do that first. Ashumet and Catherine Lee.
Nick, do you want me to share the screen for you, or do you want to share your own screen?
If you could share the screen, Ben, that would be perfect.
Sure. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep,
Yes.
I got it on my end.
Is that good for everybody?
Beautiful.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Ben. So basically the first thing that we did on Ashumet was, or first change that we made, was to add flow arrows specifically to the swales and also the catch basins just to kind of show the direction of flow and also show the which way we kind of wanted the road to pitch. So like, for example, next to the one of the swales, we would kind of pitch the road so all stormwater runs or sheets into that swale just to collect it as much as we can. The two proposed catch basins and associated piping were maintained because Mark and Jim and I all discussed, and we believe that everything is being adequately treated on both sides of the road. So there's basically a two forms of treatment system. So like on the right-hand shoulder, you have that first swale and plunge pool, and on the left-hand shoulder, you also have that curbing and the system of two catch basins that ultimately discharge into the plunge pool. And I know one of the concerns that was brought up in the last meeting was that vernal pool, and kind of directing the stormwater towards that vernal pool may be problematic. But Mark and I discussed, and he believed that it'd be better to discharge towards that vernal pool and instead of, discharging into a pristine grassy pond. So we kind of just kept that as is, and really the only change that we made was just to add flow arrows to kind of, show which way we wanted the road to pitch. Okay, so this next one is Catherine Lee Bates. And one of the major things that we changed was at about station. Then could you zoom into the leaching pit, please?
Yeah, yeah. It's around station 20 plus 50.
Yeah, so about station 20 plus 50, there was an existing catch basin with an existing outfall that discharged into the pond, but I double checked with Jim on that, and the outfall is inactive. So what we decided to do instead was add a leaching pit on the directly across from the existing catch basin on the other side of the road, and we would direct all stormwater through a HDPE pipe and drain into that leaching pit. And then one of the other things that we did was we did have a proposed catch basin, and I know one of the questions that Mark had during our meeting or site walk was, where do those existing catch basins go or drain to? And we Jim did confirm that with us, and that it does drain into the culvert and would not directly drain into the pond.
Okay, so I think that is it for those two sites. So did you guys have any questions on this NOI?
Anybody have any comment? Well, let's go down the regular process, if you would. Jen, do you want to start?
I have no questions or comments. I believe all of Mark's concerns were addressed. Kevin, anything?
No further comments.
Okay. Betsy?
No comments, thanks.
Courtney?
No comment. Thank you.
Kevin?
No comment.
Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
No comment.
Peter?
Walsh, no comments.
Russ?
Robbins, no comment.
Steve?
Sorry if I missed it. Did we get a DP number?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Thank you. No other comments.
Thank you, Steve.
So
Okay.
I'll
Go
make
ahead.
a motion to accept as discussed.
I'll second it.
The
Bird.
hearing and take it under advisement, correct?
Yes. Accept as discussed and take under advisement. Gladfelter.
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin O'Brien? Did we lose Kevin?
No, is there?
Wait a minute.
No.
I hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Was that an affirmative?
Yes.
Thank you. Mark?
Ernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter? Peter, you there?
Walsh, aye.
Thank you. Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Okay. That hearing is closed. Next
Okay,
up
thank you.
is James McLaughlin, Town of Falmouth, Chester Street, Elm Road, Old Main Road, and Garnet Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install structural stormwater treatment best management practices and the resurface of the entire lengths of Chester Street, Elm Road, Old Main Road, and Garnet Avenue, and to resurface the entire length of Chester Street. All right, sorry, that's a double tap there. Okay. Jim, do you want to start? I want to hand it right over to Ben.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. James McLaughlin again, Town Engineer. And similar to the previous hearing, we did meet with Mark and Alyssa, visited all the locations for each of these roadways. And based on the suggestions that Mark and Alyssa had, we ended up adding additional swales and in some locations super elevating the road. And that follows along with, as Nick had mentioned, adding these flow arrows just so that there's no question about which way the road should be graded and pitched so that we can get the water directly over to the swales and eliminate some of the crowns in the existing roadways. And I'll let Nick follow up with some of the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Perfect.
Can
Thanks, Jim.
everyone see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks, Jim. Nick Shaw again, Comprehensive Environmental. So like I said, like Jim said, the first thing that we did was add flow arrows to this as well in order to kind of detail which way we want the road to pitch, especially if it's super elevated in a certain area. The next thing that we did is propose a swale or move the current pre-existing proposed swale to station 0 plus 50 to 1 plus 40. And we shifted that north directly across from Dairy Lane, because that was one of the comments that Mark came up with, and that would kind of better treat in that area and block some of the more of the stormwater from getting to that wetland just to the south. And the next BMP idea that we had or discussed was an under drain was added to the proposed swale at approximate station 6 plus 76 to 7 plus 50 to improve stormwater treatment in areas of high groundwater. At the time of our site walk, we noticed that there was ponding of water, and Mark brought up the concern of a high groundwater table in that location. So we didn't know just a normal swale, how that would work. So Ben and I came up with the idea of adding kind of like similar to the one on Garnet Ave, adding a swale with an under drain to kind of treat that and then send any water across the street and into an outfall with a stone apron. And that would discharge, away from the high groundwater area. And then and then get treated by both the under drain and the stone apron before ultimately discharging towards that wetland. So the next BMP that we came up with, curbing was added along the northbound shoulder at approximate station 9 plus 67 to 20 plus 41. And this would direct stormwater towards our proposed BMPs.
Sorry, Nick, is this the right map for you?
Yep. So then after that, we also proposed, we added a swale to station 20 plus 44 to 20 plus 71 to provide additional stormwater treatment as discussed. with Mark and Jim. And then we also added a swale with a riprap spillway to 22, station 22 plus 29 to 22 plus 83. So all of the ideas that we came up with along this Chester Street was basically just to add additional swales in certain locations and include those flow arrows just to indicate pitch as best we can, so there is no question for the contractor.
Okay, so this is on to Elm Road, Nick?
Yep. So the first BMP that we added was a swale with a riprap spillway at station 5 plus 95 to 6 plus 60 approximately. Mark indicated that this was a great place to put a swale with a riprap spillway as there was no current BMP treatment. And that was kind of a low spot. There is an existing catch basin directly to the south of that, but Mark was concerned about how much flow that catch basin would be receiving. So he thought the addition of a swale would kind of complement that very well. And then we also added flow arrows directing towards that swale to indicate road pitch. Okay, this is Garnet Ave.
Garnet, yep.
So again, flow arrows are added just to indicate road pitch as best we can. We decided to keep the road crested in that area just because Jim brought up the concern of possible ice hazards if we super elevated it just to one side, because that Garnet Ave is surrounded by marshland or land under ocean, as I added on the plans, on both sides of the road, especially heading towards the Bourne town line. So that was a concern of Jim's. So we decided to keep the road crested. And then we would, like I said, direct the stormwater into the existing swale with the under drain, and then ultimately tie that into the existing outfall before discharging into the land under Atlantic Ocean. And that would be kind of a dual treatment process because there, it would get filtered by like layers of sand and rock before ultimately discharging out. So the water would be treated before being discharged.
And this one, Nick, is Old Main.
Yep, this is the last one of this NOI package. So we followed the same theme and did add flow arrows to this one. Originally, we had curbing from station 72 approximately to 77 plus 50. It was ultimately decided to remove this proposed curbing because there was adequate woodland area that would kind of treat, you know, sheet flow coming off from the road. So we didn't feel the need to have that curbing on there. And that woodland areas would treat the stormwater before it even reaches the vernal pool. And then instead, we also had a proposed catch basin originally at about roughly 77 plus 50. We removed that proposed catch basin and instead added a proposed swale with riprap spillway in place. And that would better treat stormwater. And Mark and Jim both agreed that that would probably capture a bigger volume of stormwater as well. And then I also did confirm out there is an existing berm to be maintained, and that would kind of deflect any stormwater before reaching that other vernal pool.
Okay, so I think that is all the sites that Nick wanted to present. We do have a file number for this project. And I think one other thing that we wanted to note when we sent the hard copies of the plans to the Concom, we also updated the buffer impact areas just so that those were accurately reflected for this NOI, because some of the buffer areas did increase, the impact areas did increase on that.
Thank you. Jen, do you want to start? Or Kevin?
Just the same comments, and I just want to thank everyone for listening to staff and incorporating some of the staff's concerns. So thank you, gentlemen.
Ben, do you mind stopping screen sharing?
Yep.
Please.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Jen just said, thank you guys, and no further comment.
Okay. Jim, I have a question for you about, I think it's Garnet Ave. Does anything need to be coordinated with Bourne? You're going right up to the line, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Our limit of work will be right at the town line. And there's already a noticeable pavement differential close to where the town line is. You can see that
Yeah.
Bourne's is in a little bit better shape than the town of Falmouth.
Not for long. Excellent, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go for comments. Betsy?
So I have no comment, but that Garnet Ave was particularly rough on a bicycle.
Courtney?
No comments.
Kevin?
No comments.
Okay, Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
I just had one. When you say treatment, what is the treatment, Nick, that it does?
Are you talking about
Actually, all of them say that you say the spillways will treat. So I just want to know what.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can dive into that a little bit more. So specifically on the Garnet Ave one and some of the other areas where we have like an under drain or perforated pipe. So that perforated pipe is located at the very bottom of the swale. So the water would run through a couple layers of like either crushed stone or sand and something along the lines of that. It kind of works the same way as like a pool filter would work. So the water would run through those layers before ultimately getting discharged out into, wherever we're discharging it, whether it be a wetland or the land under Atlantic Ocean like we are in Garnet Ave. And so the riprap spillways kind of work the same way. And it's also an emergency spillway. Like if the swale decides if there's a big rain event and the swale completely fills with water, the water has somewhere to go. So it's not just like overflowing over the top of the swale and into the road. We have a direct channel where that water can flow out to. And then also the riprap spillway is the same way. Some of the water can infiltrate a little bit with riprap spillways, and it would kind of remove suspended solids and some of the other nutrients of the water before it would, reach like a woodland area or a wetland area. And Ben can add on to this if he has any other better explanations.
Yeah, I think, Nick, you got it right. Most of what we tried to do the best is to infiltrate where we could, where we thought there would be good clearance to groundwater, which would provide, obviously, we'd have the pretreatment with TSS in the swale that would have to be cleaned out, and then provide nutrient removal. With the areas where we thought maybe groundwater was high and we installed under drain, we kind of looked at it as our main focus was let's take care of the TSS in some of the catch basins that we have or the swales. And then with the primary focus maybe around Garnet to filter, we would try to filter out both phosphorus and nitrogen through those. And there's kind of a two-phase thing going on. The phosphorus is taken up through plant uptake with the vegetation and the growth media on top of that swale. And then you have the underlying crushed stone area, which could kind of act like essentially gravel wetland type situation where you have some nutrient removal focused on nitrogen in those areas. So the majority of the ones we tried to do was provide infiltration, which typically would be your best treatment when you can do it.
Thank you very much. I like the explanation. I was just concerned about maintenance and whatever, but thank you.
All right. Peter?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that the DEP number was received for this project.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay, no further comments.
thank you. Russ,
No comments or questions.
Steve?
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion, but I have another question.
Okay,
So my question is, in a place like Garnet Ave, how you describe that would work? I'm thinking biologically how it would work. What happens when it gets inundated with salt water in a storm?
Sure. In a large storm, if it comes up over Garnet Ave.
Right, right.
So to be honest with you, I think you would probably flush it out with rainwater afterward. You know, you have the issue is you might have some salt tolerant plants in that mix that you would hope would come back after that if the salt kills those plants off. But eventually you'd hope that that vegetation would come back and provide nutrient uptake again. And then if there was salt water in that, essentially the groundwater, it would be intended to be flushed out through the crushed stone. And after a few storms that did not flood and not have salt water, you'd essentially replace it with the fresh water and possibly the bacteria that's in there that would be breaking down the nitrogen.
Okay,
And
that's
you'd hope
great.
that there'd be some anaerobic activity in there after a while. But yeah, that is a possibility that could happen.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And I'll make a motion to close this hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter?
Carl Hawk, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing, and take it under advisement. We'll take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien,
Mark?
aye.
Maury?
Carl Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
next up, Ellen Rulin and Sarah Buckwalter, number 2, Cotuit Road, North Falmouth, Mass, for permission to raise RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling, and construct a new single-family dwelling with associated clearing, grading, and landscaping, and to install mitigation plantings. Betsy, could I have a quorum, please?
This is going to be a surprise to everyone. It's all of us.
All right. Okay. Jen, do we have a DEP number for this?
Yes.
Okay. Is that all we were waiting on?
Well, there were some revisions to the plan. Mr.
Oh,
Burke
that's-
is here.
Okay.
I promoted
Mr.
Mike
Burke-
up. So he might just want to go through the revisions of the plan for you.
Hello,
Yep.
folks.
Mr. Borselli?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Can you verify you can hear me?
Yep,
All right,
Can you hear you?
I got you, Mike.
thanks. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant. This is a continued hearing. The last hearing was, the issues were discussed. We made some plan revisions. We did not have a DEP file number. We do now have a DEP file number. The suggested changes were relatively simple. There were proposed mitigation cedar trees that were in a line along this property line, and we were asked to cluster them into a tighter position as they're shown here on this side. And the same thing was on the other side. They were up the property line, and now they're clustered together to form more of a grove adjacent to the shrub mitigation planting. We were also had left off the whether the roads were public or private, and we've since verified that they are in fact private, and they're labeled as such. And that was Just the extent of the plan revisions. And I'm happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Jen and or Kevin?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
No questions.
Kevin,
I
you-
think that this is going to be a good chance to build some good habitat down there.
It is.
okay. Now we'll go down for comments. Betsy,
No comments, thank you.
Courtney,
No comments, thank you.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
No comments.
Maury,
No comments.
Peter.
Did the DEP number come through?
It did, Peter.
Okay, no comments.
Russ,
Questions or comments?
Steve,
No question. Thank you.
okay.
I'll make
Mr.
a-
Chairman, it doesn't look like we have any chat questions either, so.
Excellent.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter.
Bird,
I'll
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing for number 2, Cotuit Road. We'll take the vote. And acknowledging there is no chat questions. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm going to move you back down to an attendee until your next hearing, okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Right. I can do this.
Okay, next up is Robert J. and Natalie Colgan, 133 Fay Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE, the existing structures and construct a new single-family dwelling and driveway, install fill, install mitigation plantings, and all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping.
Mr. Chairman, we're all on the quorum.
Okay. I believe this is Mr. Bunker.
Yes, good evening. This is Mr. Bunker, BSS Design. I'm a registered land surveyor. I hope you can all hear me now.
Yes.
And,
Yes. Quick question, Tom. I hate to interrupt, but is Jeff with you?
yes, he is.
Okay, all right.
Let me share my screen here.
6 foot apart.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, you see that?
Yes.
All right, so we were here 2 weeks ago, and there were a few questions remaining. One of them being on we had shown the existing leaching septic system leaching field to be repurposed as a drainage leaching. We had noted that on the existing conditions and demolition plan. And so now, as you can see, we have noted that to abandon the existing SIS and crush and fill it in place. So that is being removed from use. And going to the proposed plan, you see it's no longer shown in here as the drainage area. And so what we have done is we've put dry wells around. The roof plan is not done yet, so we don't know exactly where downspouts will be. But I do have a note down here that locations of the dry wells are not definitive, and they must be placed according to the built locations of the downspouts, and every downspout must be connected to a dry well. I hope that I have that covered there. So there'll be dry wells all around. And the added added more air conditioning. The builder did say that we need 4 air conditioning condensers, so we put them out there along the garage. And then added the 9 cedar trees to replace the 9 trees that are being removed. So we put 5 in a group here. I specified that they be no closer than 6 feet apart, for a little grouping down here in the closest area to the closest to the resource area in this location, and then 4 staggered along the other end of the top of the coastal bank. Again, not more than 6 feet apart in that location. So as far as those are the 3 main concerns that you had. Was well, 2 really, the drainage and the cedar trees, and I hope we've shown them to your satisfaction.
Okay. For the record, Tom, there's a typo at the top where it says, where you have the 5 cluster of cedars, it says plant 4.
Oh dear. That was a copy from the other note down here. Yep. We'll fix that one. You good eyes.
Again, splitting hairs here. Okay, Jen and or Kevin?
I have no comments or questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Kevin?
I have no additional comments.
Okay. Tom, if you would, could you stop screen sharing?
Okay.
Be selfish, please.
Stop share. There it is. Gotcha.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go for comments. Betsy?
Did you call on me, Jamie?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I couldn't hear you.
What was the other Betsy? But go ahead, you can go first.
All right. So I like the fact that Tom has the trees socially distanced. And I also like the idea of the dry wells instead of all the piping that would be necessary to bring it down. And also in the area where you all had a septic system for so many years. So those are my only comments.
Thank you. Courtney?
No comments, good improvements.
Okay. Kevin?
No comments. Thank you.
Mark?
Looks good to me. No comments.
Good. Maury?
Jen, was staff okay with the trees being 2 to 3 feet off the property line?
I mean, they're cedars, so it should be fine. I mean, Tom, can you just move them a little off the property line a bit? I mean, once we're in the field, we can, you know, kind of cite them.
Yeah, we can move them over 5 feet or whatever 5 feet off the property line.
That would be helpful, Tom. Thank you.
Sure.
I would think from now on, we should keep doing that because when they get jammed up against the other property line, the people have the right
to cut them.
Peter?
No comments.
Russ?
No comments, questions.
Steve?
No comments. Thank you.
Tom, thank you for the revisions. Thank you for addressing everything. Thank you for all the dry wells. I'm spoiled.
I'll make a motion, close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Third, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to close the hearing, take it under advisement for 133 Fay Road. We'll take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird,
Gordon?
aye. Oh, I'm sorry.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Rooney, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
Excellent. It's unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Mr. Bunker. All right, next up, Terrence J. and Margaret N. Forster, 37 Beckles Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a timber stairway and landings with handrails on a coastal bank.
Hello, good evening. I'm Jeff Ryther with BSS Design. Everything working, Tom?
Share.
See the plan,
Jeff.
everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, very good. Well, Jeff Ryder with BSS, I just said that, but I'm here representing the foresters. So we were continued for a few items on the stairway down the bank. A comment was made, well, why don't we, as a condition, make, make this a 3-to-1 calculation, like for a buffer project. So we had 164 feet of stairway. So I used the 3-to-1 multiplier on that. And you'll see those areas in the plan here and over here. That number comes to 492, but I rounded it up a bit to 550, more or less 50 shrubs in that buffer. A comment was made then to protect that buffer, with a rail fence, just a single rail down low. So that's on the plan as well. That's along the outside of the planting. If you can see that, or that little hand. All right, then the third thing was excuse me. At the base of the stairway, I was asked to consider flipping up the lower section. So we have a detail for that. You'll see that here. It says flip up here.
Can you zoom in on that?
Right here.
Thank you.
This is the stem at the bottom. If we were to flip it up, it takes that arc travel. It says flip up path of lower section. And it's a 3-foot by 5-foot piece. And it's going to be a little bit less in weight because we're just using the outer 2 stringers to do that last 5 feet in steps. So
great.
That'll hopefully work down there. That's not a big section, but a manageable section of 5 feet with PT and all the hardware. So I think that would work. And then the last thing is I have a revision over here in the bottom of the sheet dated April 7th. That's about it. Again, I didn't have an actual figure to use on what kind of multiplier, so I used the larger of the 2 that are in the regs. So it's a 3-to-1 multiplier on the area of the steps, then added, rounded it up, of course. That'll be it.
Thank you, Jeff. If you don't mind, stop screen sharing.
Okay, where's that one to?
Jen and/or Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. It was nice to see the added buffer. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you for Kevin for picking up on that at the first hearing. So that's a nice enhancement to that area. And Courtney, as long as Courtney's okay with the hinge, because I think it was Courtney's idea, we're good. Kevin?
Kevin, did you have anything?
Jeff, thanks for the edits you made. I think you did a good job.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jen, do we have any concerns with the fact that the whole top of the coastal bank is mowed down?
Well, they're going to put those plantings in, and I mean, yes, it is a concern, but I think the buffer plantings in that area will help. But
Well, maybe if they see part of that, that will encourage them to expand it.
yes,
All right.
yes.
We're going to have comments. Betsy?
No, Jeff, thanks for incorporating all the comments from last week.
Yeah, thank you.
Courtney?
I'll second Betsy's comments, and I'm pleased to see that you included my out of the box design ideas. But I think that's a good good solution to your problem.
Okay,
Thank you,
Kevin,
Bernie.
No comments, thank you.
Mark,
Well, I guess what it is at this point, but my personal feeling is that hinged up section is much more susceptible to any storm damage than the rigid section would have been, but I guess we'll see how it goes. That's all.
Maury,
Just two comments. So the board knows that they are incorporating a, split rail fence or a single rail cedar fence, I think was on the
Yep.
plan, which is good. And that will help deter the mowing. The only thing I had a question actually with Kevin, if you discussed with them the plant list, because there's actually no amounts, it just gives you the species and there's an off, I just don't want sweet fern to be the dominant plant. Because we know how that works out.
Jen, maybe you could speak to this. I think that we discussed conditioning it to those three species, a certain composition.
Yeah, Maury, basically the staff's recommendation would you would do somewhat of an equal mix of all species, so it's not predominantly the sweet fern or rose.
Thank you. I just know that if that was their choice, sweet fern would be it.
Nope, understandable.
Peter,
Question. No questions.
thank you. Russ
Robbins, no question.
and Steve.
No questions. Thank you for the improvements.
All right,
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
And second that motion. Patton,
Bird, second.
okay. We have a motion and a second to close the hearing, take it under advisement. Do we have any public comments or any chat questions, Jen?
It doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Okay, so with a motion and a second, I'll take the vote to close this 37 Beckles Road and take it under advisement. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Bernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
and Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Okay.
All right, next up. Brian and Doris Cameron, 92 Indian Ridge Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling, and to construct a new single-family dwelling, upgrade to a Title V septic system, install mitigation trees and all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just promoting the applicant's representatives up.
Okay,
And I think we have Teresa and there's Mike.
excellent.
And the quorum is the same. It's all of us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Borselli, you're up. Hello, Teresa.
I'll start it off, Mr. Chairman, for the record. Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering. I represent the applicant along with Teresa Sprague from Blue Flax Design. At the last hearing, there was some discussion about incorporating an invasive plant management plan and updating to show additional trees next to the driveway. The revised plan that I submitted also picked up on the fact that I missed one tree we were proposing to cut. I had originally said 4 trees were proposed. There's actually 5, and the revised plan indicates that. So we're removing 5 trees in the lawn areas and replacing them with a total of 10 trees in various places on the property, as well as some shrub layering also. The details of which are outlined on the plan by Blue Flax Design. And with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa. And we're both here for questions.
We'll let Teresa do her thing first.
Teresa, you need to unmute yourself. Teresa?
Yeah, it looks like I'm unmuted.
No, yeah, I just unmuted you.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that. Teresa Sprague with Blue Flex Design. I think it's a pretty straightforward management plan. We're looking at about 2,200 square feet of invasive species management, mainly Asiatic bittersweet, vine honeysuckle, multiflora rose, shrub honeysuckle. In the areas that we're proposing to remove the invasive vegetation, we're doing a mix of native trees and shrubs. Trees include eastern red cedar, a black tupelo, and some amelanchier along the edge of the proposed new driveway. And then in addition to that, we're proposing some arrowwood viburnum, bayberry, and some winterberry holly sort of in the understory around the eastern red cedar and the amelanchier. So I think this is pretty straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions about the planting.
Thank you. If you could, Mike, would you please, Teresa, I'm not sure, stop screen sharing?
Sure, I'll stop.
Thank you. Okay, Jen and or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll start. I think there was some discussion at the last hearing about the area where it is now proposed to be trees, that the invasives were pretty much being held at bay. I think, Betsy, that was one of your comments. There was concern from the staff, and we had a discussion with Mike afterwards about if the trees were planted in front of that, then the invasives would not be held at bay, and they would eventually damage the trees. So we thought it was best to just remove everything there, put the trees, and then put the shrubs in front, and thought that would probably be better for plant health standpoint. Anything to add, Kevin?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
But I like your plan, Teresa. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll open it up for comments. Betsy?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jen. I think I like the plan as it came back.
Yeah.
Courtney?
Read, no comments.
Kevin?
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
Just a quick question, maybe to Jen or Teresa. The 12-inch cherry that's toward the south west, near the very end of the new plantings, that's not shown as a removed tree. Is it staying?
12-inch cherry. Maury, could you repeat the location of the cherry tree?
Yes, it's due south. It would be southwest of your plantings, the very end, closest to the beach reservation.
Near the row of viburnum.
Oh, yeah. No, there's no proposal to remove that. The viburnum will be tucked in underneath after the invasive vegetation is removed. Correct. So the cherry would remain.
That's tucking in a lot under that cherry. The other question I have is everybody happy with the size of the plantings? 7-gallon Amelanchier and 2-gallon and 3-gallon. I mean, the Amelanchier are little, the 7-gallon.
We could certainly go larger, Maury. That wouldn't be a problem at all. I think we've got plenty of room in the area once the invasive vegetation is removed. So if you'd like, we could just make a plan change and go with something generally more in the 6-foot range for an Amelanchier.
That would be more appropriate. And again, here we are. I just so the board, we keep looking at these. They cram all the plantings right on the property line. And, some of it's not even 10 foot off the house. But if everybody's happy with it, I think the invasives to get removed is fine. But we're putting mitigation in a place that people can remove because it's within 10 feet.
This isn't planted for mitigation. This is planted because trees are being taken down.
Maura, you good?
That's mitigation. When they take trees down, they have to mitigate for them, Betsy. 99 caliper.
So, I mean, we could certainly push the cedar trees off the southern property line a little bit more in the planting. I guess the only concern I had was we're getting awfully close to the septic system. We tried to stay within a reasonable range off of the septic system in order to plant.
Well, the resource is, the trees aren't even near the resource. You're not even near the beach reservation.
Well, if I could chime in on that, that neither of the trees we're removing were actually in the middle of a lawn, far away from the beach reservation. There's several that are, they're all on the opposite side of the existing house. So it's not as though we removed them from the A zone close to the beach reservation. They're all sort of in a disease state, and they're not doing very well. And we're hoping the cedars do better in the Amelanchier.
As I remember, Jen pointed out, and I think that part of the reason why the cedars are there is because it's a border between two very close houses. And it seemed, to me, at least to me, it's a reasonable compromise.
Okay, Maura, you good?
I'm always good.
Peter? Russ?
Yeah, no comments or questions.
Steve?
No comments or questions, thank you.
Okay. Peter, do you have something to add?
No comments.
Okay. That's what I got from lip reading. Jen, just for clarification, are the cedars mitigation for the invasive removal?
I mean, basically, yes. We had asked for some replacement because of the Zone B vegetation being removed. A bunch of ornamentals there, plus the invasives, and the invasives is what the staff was concerned with about removal and replacement. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Gladfelter.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments, any public comments and or chat comments?
No comments in chat regarding this project.
Okay. With that in mind, we have a motion and a second to close 92 Indian Ridge. We'll take a vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Bernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter?
Wolf, aye.
Russ?
Collins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
All right, it is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is a request for a certificate of compliance. Judith R. Berg, 344 Pinecrest Beach Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Request for a certificate of compliance for Mass DEP number 25-3679.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a holdover from last year, probably like last fall, I think. We had the issue where there was a large outdoor patio built-in kitchen built on the property. The property owner had measured taken a tape measure and put it on the slope measured up, thought he was out of jurisdiction. Obviously, it's kind of not the way you measure. So was required to mitigate for some of that. It's a very tight site. It was a very tight site at the beginning when for the other project that we had permitted, but the board basically gave them instructions to plant when they were able to, fill in as much as they could, and the board would grant compliance. That has been done. We have received the survey, and I think at this point, you should feel comfortable with allowing the staff to issue the certificate of compliance.
Okay.
Add, Kevin?
Kevin, have you seen it?
I have not seen it actually since, but we've seen pictures and we believe that the plantings do look
Yeah.
appropriate.
Okay. So you guys are okay with it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask for comments anyway. Betsy,
I have no comments, thanks.
Courtney,
No comments.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
No comments.
Maury,
No comments.
Peter,
No comment.
Russ,
No comments.
Steve.
No comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Make a motion to issue the certificate of compliance.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I don't think this is something for public comment, correct?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you
So we're
can
gonna
ask
take
for
the vote.
public comment. It is a hearing.
Okay, then I will ask, is there any public comment? on
Nobody in
staff?
chat.
Okay, we're covered. We'll take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walt, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Okay, it is unanimous. The certificate of compliance is accepted. Thank you, everyone. All right, next up is vote order conditions. First one is Scott Carpenter, GM for THO of Massachusetts Safe Harbors Marina, 36 and 42 Fiddler's Cove, North Falmouth.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the small increase in the dockage at Fiddler's Cove. Excuse me, generally, when the board is looking at this type of marina, we have looked at the footprint of a marina. I think I cited some examples at the last hearing, particularly in Falmouth Inner Harbor, where, you know, given the size of Fiddler's Cove, I don't think they're percentage-wise they're adding a tremendous amount of additional dockage. So I think it does fall within the footprint of that marina. We did receive a few abutter and neighborhood concerns regarding Fiddler's operation and the amount of or the size of the operation itself, but it wasn't specifically rooted, the concerns in our regulations. That is how the staff approached the project, given it is a marina. If the board has any, you know, concerns with that or questions, you can ask us.
Okay. Kevin, do you want to add anything to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So comments, as it were. Betsy?
No comments.
Okay. Courtney?
No comments.
Kevin?
No comments.
Mark?
No comments.
Maury?
No comment.
Peter?
No comments.
Russ?
No comments.
Steve?
No comment.
All right.
One thing, Mr. Chairman, we will incorporate any time of year restriction governed by Division of Marine Fisheries. I can't remember if there's one or not, but we will incorporate any DMS comments into the decision.
So it'd be similar order conditions to like harbor, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right,
Move to accept as discussed. Gladfelter,
Bird, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed. Take the vote, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
and Steve.
Patton, aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Next up for order of conditions is Bay Ridge Realty LLC, 127 Shorewood Drive, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
wanna-
this was a raise and construct. The staff originally had some concerns that with the proposed patio, given the state of the site currently, but I do believe that Tim Santos was able to demonstrate that there was a previous concrete or stone patio there. And that was helpful to the review for staff because we, like I said, were concerned. Our original concerns was that what are the pavers out there now really didn't constitute a patio, but I think the applicant demonstrated that it was there. So I don't think the staff has any additional concerns at this point. Kevin, anything to add?
I do not have anything to add to that.
Okay.
Do we need quorum on this? We okay?
We do. I think it's all of us.
It's all of us.
All right, I figured, but I better ask. All right, comments, Betsy,
No comment.
Courtney,
Bird, no comment.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
Comments.
Maury,
No comment.
Peter,
No comments.
Russ,
No comment.
Steve.
No comment, Patton.
All right. Anybody want a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the order as discussed.
Carlo Hawks,
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the order conditions for 127 Shorewood Drive. Take the vote, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
Unanimous, accepted as discussed. Next up for order conditions is Kevin M. Arnstein, 31 Catomet Street, Falmouth, Mass. Jen?
Again, raise and construct. I think the only comments, there was a concern by the abutter on the septic. The only comments I think that we had were basically the path that was fragmenting the proposed mitigation plantings, and we didn't want that in there. We want a grouping. So I think those were the only comments.
Okay. Did they do a revised plan for that, or we just simply, I know he accepted that they would.
No,
do
we can condition that. I can't remember if there's a revised plan in yet. I don't believe so. So we can just condition that the path be eliminated between the mitigation plantings.
Comments, Betsy,
The other thing we discussed, and this is why Susan's minutes are so important, is if they need to do dewatering,
Yes.
they'll, whatever.
Contact the staff, yeah.
Right. That's all. Thanks.
thank you. Courtney,
No comments.
Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
No comments.
Maury,
I did ask for denitrifying, but no comment.
Peter,
No comments. Walsh.
Russ,
Robbins, no comment.
Steve.
Patton, no comments. Thank you.
All right.
Move to accept the order as discussed. Gladfeld,
Second.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Bird,
I
Thank you.
second.
Okay, we have a motion as a second to accept the order conditions as discussed for 31 Potomac Street. Take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks,
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
All right, it is unanimous, accepted as discussed. Next up, for order conditions, Michael Herzig, 8 Nichols Road, Falmouth, Mass.
This was the proposed garage built on that kind of mound. I think the only concern was that the garage didn't have an elevation on it, so that we needed it to condition for one additional tree, I believe.
I think it's 2 trees.
2 trees? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there was one with, again, this is from the minutes.
Yeah.
There was a tree for the garage and then Maury mentioned
There's a tree.
another tree.
Yeah.
There's a tree that's in the way. Yeah,
Correct.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so add 2 trees and
And I think Mike's aware of that and accepted that, just to say it.
I have a question, Jamie. It's a building question.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I have to find it first. Where's my, oh, okay, no, it's because it's outside that VE for building code, so it doesn't have to have. Okay, nothing. 2 trees.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain tie downs they have to do for the piles anyway,
Mm-hmm,
standard in the building code.
okay.
All right, comments, Betsy?
I hate to do this, but when Maury mentioned the tree, I think it was the same tree. It's the tree that has to be moved from the garage, so I think it's just 1 tree.
1 tree, got it. I had 1 tree in my notes, so.
So there doesn't have to be one within the mitigation then. Correct?
We said it would be near where the
Plants up, the,
plants, but not outside it, but near.
Okay. All right.
so
Any other
kind of
comment?
where the word lawn is on the plan near, the 40.8 shot between the top of the bulkhead, the revetment or I'm sorry, mean high water and the deck. So between that and the plantings where it says lawn on the plan is where Mike had kind of circled with his little cursor at the hearing.
Okay. But it's only 1.
Yes.
Okay. Betsy, you good?
Just like Maury, I'm always good.
Yeah. Courtney?
This is the garage, right, with the
Correct.
concrete, yeah. So,
Yes.
My question really goes to the rest of you who are in the construction business. Are you comfortable that that retaining wall can support that foundation? And the reason I say that is because obviously if it isn't, that changes the scope of work on the site.
Yeah, but the building's not going on the retaining wall. The building's going on independent piles.
Right, and they're going down 4 feet and so on. So you're comfortable with that.
I am.
Fair enough. I have no other questions.
Okay. I mean, that's a good question, but that came up early in the,
No, I brought it up and, Mike, I asked whether there were footings under that retaining
Right.
wall. And I think Mike, or whoever it was who was presenting it, said
Yep.
that, that was the architect, Yarosh, I believe, who
Yep.
would okay it.
yeah, because
So-
again, they're not relying on that for the building. So,
Okay, I mean, I just hate to see us approve something and then they have to come back. and
right.
say,
No, I believe
We're
they've
gonna
addressed,
tear the whole thing out.
right.
Now it's changes.
He addressed it. He said that he doesn't know whether there are footings under the wall, but the wall is separate from the building that's going to be built.
Okay, fair enough. I have no other questions or concerns.
Thank you. Kevin,
No comments.
Mark,
No comments.
Maury,
No comments.
Peter,
No comments.
Russ,
No comments.
and Steve?
My question was about the lot coverage. It's not in our purview, but that's an awful lot of stuff on that very small lot. And the issue of the existing porch entry and the runoff from that into the existing garage, but I was a little concerned about that, but that was a question I had or a comment that I had.
Does he have a drywall on there? I think he did.
Yes,
It's awfully
there is a
close.
dry well.
Yeah. So I can't speak to the lot coverage, but the runoff is addressed.
Okay, thank you.
And just to say it, I mean, the lot coverage would come up in the permit process. So,
It
They
does
want-
look like it's under the allowable lot coverage. Existing and proposed structures would be 12.7% lot coverage on that.
yeah. So
Additional.
he's good.
No, that's existing
No.
and proposed structures.
Total.
And then existing and proposed structures with parking and paving, which I don't believe zoning considers parking and paving as part of overall lot coverage by structure, is
Okay.
15.6, so they're under.
I move to accept this
Oh.
as discussed.
I'll second. Bird.
Steve, did you have anything else? You got cut off.
No, thank you. I was not cut off. I was finished. Thank you very much. Jennifer and
Okay.
Peter, my questions.
Okay,
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed? Jen, did you want to add anything?
no, I'm good.
All right, so we'll take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carl Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
and Steve.
Patton, aye.
All right, it is unanimous to accept 8 Nichols Road as discussed. Folks,
Mr.
that's all we
Chairman,
have.
Mr. Chairman, if the chair is willing, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Excellent.
I'll second
I
that.
will,
One second, Mr. Chairman. Peter?
Okay.
After they adjourn, just stay on real quickly. I'm going to tell you something, okay? It's good. Okay,
and
I heard the
Jen-
motion. Who was?
Second,
Maury.
Patton, second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Take the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Kearney, aye.
Maury,
Fellow Hawks,
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I, and thank you to the Coonamessett River Trust for their new portrayal of the system.
Pretty
All right.
awesome, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
wonderful.
It's unanimous. We're adjourned. Thank you to IT, Thomas and Adriana.
Thank
Thomas,
you,
please
IT.
Stop recording.
Guys.